Good morning, good afternoon, good evening around the world. My name is Doug Brunke. I'm the founder and CEO of Global Chamber. I was mentioning prior to starting this event to some folks that are in the audience, the early arrivers, that we've done hundreds, maybe thousands of events. We did 500 events last year. I never get nervous, ever, like when public speaking or anything like that. I remember years and years ago, about 25 years ago, I had like 500 people in Japan. That was a little nerve-wracking. There was a time in Beijing where I was speaking, and right before I got on, the power went off, and I was addressing 300 automotive engineers. That was stressful. So I would say those are the only times I felt any kind of a stress. Today, I feel stressed. And the reason is, this is more than a business discussion. This is a personal discussion. I think any of us can understand the concept of, certainly now that we see it playing out, of some country, some bully taking over our neighborhood, taking over our country, and changing the way we're living, and forcing us to leave and killing us and our neighbors. It's just totally not right, and it's got to stop. And so it's just so traumatic and painful to see. We've been through so much in the world the last 2 years with COVID, all the stress, all the pain and the death that's happened, and then to see this, we're better than this as a world. And so the purpose of today originally was just to discuss, let's do business in Ukraine. And we'll probably cover some of that as well, because we want to be thinking positively that, we'll be getting back to normal in Ukraine and rebuilding Ukraine and getting business back to normal and lives back to normal. In the meantime, we're in this unsteady state. And so we brought in 4 extraordinary speakers to share their perspective of what's going on the ground, and give us some ideas and thoughts about what we can do to help. So the first speaker is Igor Novikov. He is a former aide of President Zelenskyy, and I think all of us now know President Zelenskyy, and we all know the Ukrainian flag. All around the world, there's been a uniform support for what the Ukrainians are going through, and above and beyond that, admiration for the courage and the way the Ukrainians have said, look, we're just not going to allow this to happen. And being outmanned and outgunned, been able to not just hold them back, but actually make gains back at them. And the other thing that's happened is, despite Europeans and Americans and others around the world acting slowly and politically and kind of like, oh, what should we do, and fretting about consequences, which many of those are very real, it's brought the world together. And so sometimes COVID has brought, in many ways, the world together to some degree. Ukraine and this war has really brought us together against oppression and against evil, and for the Ukrainians. And so, Igor, thank you so much for taking time today to share more about what you're seeing, and ideally, also sharing with us, how we can help.
Well, thank you for having me. Let's begin with a small exercise. I mean, the way I'm going to structure it, how much time do I have, Doug?
That's a good question.
Yeah, it helps with public speaking, when you know how much time you have.
I would say, probably 20-25 minutes in terms of speaking and questions. Ideally, we can take some questions. So sure. think about that in terms of how you frame it up.
Sure. Okay. Well, let's do it this way then. I'll spend about 5 minutes giving you like the rough outline of what's going on, why it's important, and what the ripple effects and repercussions are for business and, for geopolitics, for Ukraine, for the region, for the US, and for you personally. And then the rest of the time we'll spend in a Q&A format, because there's so much of it that, I'm kind of, when this is over, I'm going to do, I used to be doing lots of public speaking, so I'm going to resume doing that. But now my speeches are going to be like 3 or 4 hours long, because there's so much of it now. Doug, can you bring up the slide? to lighten the mood a bit, I'll do with you what I do with my every single audience in Ukraine. And don't mind the fact that you're going to see some really childish pictures on the screen now, but it's very important that you kind of do this exercise. Doug?
You just keep talking and I'll get
okay, fine. A quick question. Does everyone have access to the chat? Because this is a crowd participation number. So I need all of you to participate in this. So basically what you're going to see on the screen are two very simple, yeah, we have +1, yes. Yeah, so you're going to see two really simple pictures, and there are 6 differences between the two pictures. We usually do it, I mean, some of my students are teenagers, so I time how quickly they can find the differences and then compare it to like my business clients who are like CEOs and top managers and like board members of, of major companies, right? Usually the teenagers win. Let's see if you fare any better. So you see pictures on the screen, 6 differences, go. Write in the chat, the ones you notice. Teenagers usually do it in 30 seconds. Frog, we have 1. Yeah, everyone saw the frog. 5 left. Plants, boy, that's right. Float color. Yeah, cloud. Yellow, red colors, that we had that. We have 5 so far. We need the 6. Plant had it, t-shirt had it. The bait had it. Neck, we had it. Yeah, it's the color. Okay. Seems like the teenagers are winning again. Doug, can you bring me back? There are only 5 differences between those pictures. There are only 5. And the way it usually works, I mean, I usually time adults to see how much time and energy they spend looking for a 6th difference that doesn't exist. And then I ask a very simple question. Why do you do that? I mean, those pictures are incredibly simple. I mean, they are for like kindergarten kids, and yet somehow you're still looking for that 6th difference that doesn't exist. Why? Because look, I also call this test like how to send your parents to a mental institution, because especially the older generations, we all grew up in the world where we've been told that there won't be any typos in textbooks. We always trusted authority. We always trusted, the rules of the game that we got given. And that's very bad at the moment. See, I'm looking at the chat at the same time. Hi, San Francisco. So there are only 5 differences, yet kids stop and say there are 5 differences, and adults continue looking for that 6th difference that doesn't exist. I call that an inertia of denial. So what you're seeing in the world right now, basically everything around you is changing. Not only because of COVID or the war in Ukraine. I mean, there are many changes happening in the world, and a lot of that change is caused by technology. The technology that we invent, the technology that we scale to markets, the technology that we use daily. And yet at the same time, we have that inertia of denial where we think the world's not going to change. The world is going to be exactly like it was in the 90s. And that's one of the problems that Ukraine right now is experiencing. So nobody, first of all, expected this war to be as bad as it is. When it happened, apart from Ukraine, because we in Ukraine knew that if Russia attacked, it's not going to be easy, right? But at the same time, if you look at the way the world is reacting to the war in Ukraine, you're still using the same bureaucracy, the same decision-making process, and you make the same conclusions that you had 30, 40, 50 years ago. And it shows on the ground. Like, look, we're sitting here, there's an air raid alert active in Kyiv at the moment. So, if you're lucky and I'm unlucky, you'll hear some explosions in the background. But at the same time, look, we hear the West, deliberate on, military aid to Ukraine. And the way it works, they usually go okay, we're going to hold a meeting in 3 days. We're going to negotiate. Then we need a week to do the paperwork, right? Then we need another few days for logistics, and then we get the weapons to you. Unfortunately, the world right now is, way faster than we used to. right? And that's one of the first important lessons. Secondly, like for you to give you a root cause of why this is happening, like a lot of people believe that, you know, Putin is just old, insane and everything, but look at what's happening in the world strategically, right? Russia right now is in the same position that it was like in the early days of Stalin. So it's a backward country that requires, you know, rapid industrialization. And let me explain to you what I mean. So Russia was a superpower when it was the USSR. It still had the economic potential back in the 90s and early 2000s to be one of the top powers in the world. But right now, if you look at, you know, the determining factors that determine a superpower, you know, the economy, technologies, you know, innovations, and potential future, and future-proofing that economy. Russia is a very backward country. It's no different from any country in Africa. Because look, I mean, who's going to dominate the world of quantum computers, AI, you know, digital biology, space travel, renewable energy, and so on and so forth? Definitely not Russia. It doesn't have access to those technologies, and it doesn't have time or economic capacity to catch up to the US or China, or even India for that matter. Yeah, if we were talking about, you know, exponential technologies. So that's one factor. And another factor, Russia historically views itself as an empire, as that superpower that is a major player, at least regionally. So they need to somehow channel, you know, that desire, that mindset somewhere. They need to reach that goal of being a superpower some other way, not through technology, not through innovation, not through their economy. So they're using their military. Russia right now is effectively, you know, doing what Hitler did, but unlike Hitler, you know, their economy is in bad shape, and it's going to get worse because of the sanctions. Third and most important kind of observation that we see, and what everyone should be paying attention to. Christopher, can you mute yourself? Hi. We're living in an attention society right now, and that's incredibly important because if you look at what's happening in Ukraine, it's probably the first major social media war. And it's incredible to watch it because, like, first of all, Ukraine surprised everyone. That's one of the reasons the world is helping us. Because if you look at the factors, I mean, Russia thought they were going to capture Kyiv in 3 days. Most of the Western intelligence thought they were going to capture Kyiv in 3 days, right? And nobody believed in Ukraine. Ukraine became that black swan and became that Cinderella story. And that Cinderella story became top news globally. And now Ukraine is on the agenda. And now Ukraine has that chance to survive because people are paying attention. And it's important to remember that storytelling, disinformation, counter-propaganda, information, those are the main weapons and the main determining factors that determine, you know, the global order and the outcome of this now. So that's what's different about the war. Now, what it's like for us on the ground, what you can do and how it's going to end. First of all, I mean, by the looks of it, this conflict is going to stay with us. Unfortunately, this war is going to be with us for quite some time. What we're seeing in Russia, I mean, I hear on the news constantly that the West thinks they're winning the information war against Russia. They're actually losing it. And the reason for that is that for Russia, the main target audience of their disinformation is not in the West. It's their own people domestically in Russia. And at the moment, we're observing some really disturbing rally around the flag effects in Russia. So basically, the entire nation of 100-odd something people is being zombified to a point, you know, to a point of like being back in like 1941. For them, the main enemy is the collective West. You know, Putin kind of portrays the West as an aggressor here, and Russian people are beginning to kind of believe it because of propaganda. So this war is not going to go away in a day or a week, right? It's going to stay with us. Secondly, despite what it looks like, it's a world war already. I mean, if you look at cyber attacks, if you look at propaganda, if you look at hybrid weaponry being used against the West, not only Ukraine, but the West as well, you know, Putin is likely to escalate on that front as well. So it's important to remember it concerns everyone. Putin's not going to stop in Ukraine. Ukraine is only the first step for him. And, you know, lucky for the West, And lucky for like people in Kyiv, for example, he got stuck before he achieved his objectives. But it doesn't mean he's going to give up or cancel those objectives. The main enemy is you, right? He wants to destabilize, the West. He wants to make sure you're not united. He wants to weaponize the economy against you. If you're seeing what's happening with the Russian gas now, I mean, we've been screaming at the top of our lungs for 2 years that Nord Stream 2 is not an economic tool. It's a weapon. It's a hybrid weapon against European energy security. I think Europe, unfortunately, will learn from its mistakes over the course of the next week, right? But that, Putin's aggression doesn't stop there. There's going to be cyber attacks. He's going to try and radicalize your domestic politics. He's going to attack your business. I mean, from what we're seeing, like, how reputation security, for example, is managed, like in businesses across the West. It's like we're back in 1985. The year's 2022, everything is different, but people are still using those old business methodologies that date back to 1985. So that's an important area to look into, to study, and to pay attention to. So my main message, the war is not going away. Ukraine needs your help. If you don't help Ukraine, unfortunately, this cancer is going to spread westwards, and it's a no-brainer at the moment. Where Ukraine needs help the most, if we discount the military sphere, is its economy. So we're currently at the stage where Putin realized that, he's not going to conquer Ukraine militarily quickly. So that leaves him with two options. One, a very scary and disturbing one, i.e. weapons of mass destruction, but hopefully we're not going to come to that. The second one is our economy. This country has been, disrupted in a major way. He's destroyed a lot of our infrastructure. He's trying to destroy our agriculture, thus causing that ripple effect of a food crisis globally, and it's incredibly important to remember. And Ukraine at the moment still has some momentum in its economy, but we need all the help that we can get, not to rebuild, but to actually survive the war first, because it's quickly turning into a war of attrition, Because, look, I'll give you my example. I mean, I employ over 25 people. I pay their salaries. There's no business, at the moment, and I'm using my savings to pay their salaries. But as you can imagine, my savings, if the war doesn't stop, my savings are going to end at some point, right? My business is not going to resume, and therefore, 25 people will lose their jobs, fall out from the Ukrainian economy, and most likely will get displaced. And that's what Putin wants. He wants our economy to crumble. He wants the people to flee or die. Then he wins, since he couldn't win, his blitzkrieg that he started. So we need all the help. The way it works, look, I would probably suggest, the best option that we have at the moment is for you not only to consider donating to different charities and humanitarian efforts for Ukraine, but to actually be creative and think about different collaborations with small and medium-sized Ukrainian businesses. It's really important. Look, if you're a consultancy firm, if you're an auditor, like one of the big four, for example, pick up small Ukrainian businesses that do that and enable that exchange of knowledge. Because, Ukraine has plenty of lessons that we've learned that we can share with the world. And we know a few things that you are yet to discover. We have a lot to say about your energy security, about how businesses run, how to achieve the adaptability of business, how to protect and adapt, reputational risk to the world of, global connectivity and constant cancel culture that's been weaponized by many sides now, including us, unfortunately. Look, we're using cancel culture at the moment too as a weapon to fight against Russia. So do that. Just find that collaboration. If you run a logistics firm, let the Ukrainian business operate within your territory. I mean, we somehow need to sustain our business activity until the end of this war. At least until the end of this war. And it takes a lot of creativity, and it takes a lot of work to actually figure out how to make it work. But there's no alternative for that, because if Ukrainian economy collapses, that means Ukraine will quickly lose this war, and the front line of this fight will move to our western borders, which Well, our neighbors there are Poland, Bulgaria, Slovakia, and a couple of others. All of them NATO members. And, for Putin, Ukraine, we're just like you. We're just a thorn in his side. For him, the main enemy is the collective Western NATO. That's the way he puts it. So we're holding the enemy back, but we need your help. Let's do some Q&A, okay? Because there are so many areas. Just ask me about anything. Like, what's it like on the ground? What to do? What not to do? And so on and so forth.
I see one question about the situation of Ukraine being the breadbasket of Europe. How are surrounding countries impacted by the lack of these grains and the kind of logistics of all of that? And then I'm going to open it up and just unmic yourself and ask your question.
Okay, please. Sure. Well, I don't think, our agriculture is going to affect our close neighbors as badly as it will affect North African countries and the Middle East. Those are the main the main countries that import grain from us and a couple of other important commodities. So I think, I think the way, Poland and our close neighbors are going to be affected is, first of all, through that massive displacement of people, because, it disrupts their kind of economy and their society quite a lot. I would say positively, because our people are great, and this current joke that Ukraine is the capital of great people, but at the same time, how do you prepare your country for fresh 2 million people suddenly kind of descending across your border, even with friendly intentions? So that's going to take a lot of adapting to, and I think it's going to cause certain amount of fatigue within those countries. On top of that, I think the EU is going to be the main victim and the main target for Putin here. What he's going to try and do, he's going to try and break up that European unity. So we're already seeing certain messages come out of Hungary that's, with the current government, has been historically a close ally to Putin, a couple of other countries. So he's going to try and create enough discomfort within Europe for Europe to what we call, for Europe to do a Merkel, to do an Angela Merkel, and basically say okay, look, we're not going to fight you. There's not going to be any pushback. Let's find that new stability, right? We want our gas, we want our comfort, and Ukraine is not an EU member, is not a NATO member, so figure it out. Just as long as there's no fighting, we want the refugees back to Ukraine, and we've nothing against. We want to partner up with Russia. We want that Russian money. So that's one of the objectives for Putin now. The way to prevent it would be, first of all, to realize that, unfortunately, if you want to make an omelet, you need to break some eggs. There's no way to survive that transition period in geopolitics without a certain degree of discomfort. For example, if you take Germany, one of the biggest mistakes they made was to move away from the nuclear energy, right? And not to focus on the renewables at the moment. Because, they've made themselves dependent on the Russian gas, right. And now they're basically being blackmailed with it. And so is the rest of Europe. So the way the US can help here is LNG, obviously, but on top of that, I would suggest that, look, this crisis teaches us one important lesson. We all realized, the era of big oil, big coal, and big gas is going to come to an end eventually. And, a number of academic institutions put that date around 2040s, right? I think that date has been moved forward to, the end of this decade, if not earlier. What we're seeing now is, is those final days of big oil, big coal, and big gas. So there are two ways to approach it. You can do what one of my old clients did. I had this client, an airline, back in 2019, and 2 months before COVID, and I did a keynote for them. That we did Q&A, did a bit of consulting, and there was a coffee reception. And one of the things we started talking about, black swans and different events that are unlikely to happen, but will cause great disruption. And I go, guys, what's your business plan? What's your business plan B for when the planes don't take off, for when the planes stop flying? And they just laughed at me. They said, like, look, can you imagine the world where the planes stopped flying? So you can approach, this energy transition that way. So, you can keep trading in gas, oil, and everything like there's no tomorrow, up until that cliff arrives and you just fall off it. Or you can kind of keep doing what you're doing, but at the same time, prepare for that eventual transition. So kind of slowly and comfortably adapt to the change before that opportunity becomes a threat to you. So that's the lesson there.
Got it. I think let's put it Daniel, because he's been patient, raised his hand.
Yeah.
Daniel is our global advisor in Uzbekistan. Daniel, please go ahead.
Hi, Igor. Thank you very much. I love what you're saying. I could listen to you speak for another 3 hours, so I'll look forward to those. So I mean, I'm home in New York, but I work usually in the Central Asian countries, and seems like I will be returning there in a few months. They had tremendous brain drains. Russians and Ukrainians left, as well as their smart locals left. Now I'm hearing stories of a lot of middle-class Russian IT people and such who are coming back to these countries to leave Russia and all that. And I know that Ukraine has tremendous intellectual capital. I'm wondering, thinking if current people need jobs right now. I understand that, this is a shorter term solution, but are there formal programs, or is something that can be done to bring some of these Ukrainians to countries like Central Asia or whatever, who are in need of intellectual capital, or in need in their universities and their businesses and things of this nature? It's just something to think about. I'll be done in 10 seconds. The post-Soviet space, so to speak, which is what you still share a lot in common with. So just curious about that. Thanks.
Thanks, Daniel.
Well, there are 2 points I want to make here. First of all, in terms of Ukrainians going abroad, working and paying taxes in Ukraine, that's one of the most sustainable and clever solutions to kind of this transitional period of turbulence in our economy during the war. Because I mean, like, if we oversimplify it, like, look, Ukrainian budget has plenty of holes in it, for a number of reasons. And, the purchasing power of Ukrainian people has dropped dramatically, and, is focused around essential supplies. So there's no money in Ukraine. So any way to kind of bring money into Ukraine would be through either, foreign markets and loans and, international monetary aid, or for Ukrainians to actually either work or set up businesses abroad, when there's access to capital and financial instruments, and kind of pay taxes in Ukraine, thus supporting Ukrainian budget. Plus, our mentality allows us to do that. So that's a great idea, and IT sphere is one of the spheres where it's done the easiest. Unfortunately, there's one hurdle in Ukraine at the moment because of the martial law. Male adults between 18 and 60 years of age cannot leave the country, with a few exceptions. We are kind of trying to find a solution for that. So there are a lot of people, from civil society who are communicating with the government, trying to explain to them that, we need to balance this out, because we're losing out on the money, and, we need people to fight on the economic front, not only on the military front, right? As far as Central Asian countries are concerned, I would pay close attention to how this develops before kind of giving you an answer whether there's any sustainable growth there, because at the moment it seems that domestically Putin feels rather comfortable with what he has done. His approval ratings have skyrocketed because of the rally around the flag effect. Plus, the propaganda is kind of also being very productive in zombifying Russian people. So will he stop at Ukraine, or will he actually try and, rebuild the USSR, which included those Central Asian countries? Remains to be seen. So as far as, giving advice to my fellow countrymen, for example, I wouldn't probably recommend, moving to Central Asia just yet. I'd suggest going westwards or to Southeast Asia. As far as the Russian human capital is concerned, by all means. I mean, there's definitely, you know, a small degree of brain drain. I wouldn't say it's very dramatic because, you know, I think we overestimate, you know, Russian critical thinking at the moment, you know, but, you know, there is a certain degree of brain drain and they will move to wherever they can move. And because of the sanctions and, you know, what Russians call Russophobia, very deserved Russophobia, right? You know, they probably would prefer those countries over, you know, Western Europe or the US. So, you know, they are your main pool.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. I want to, we're at the bottom of the hour, and I want to give the Acumen International, the three ladies there, an opportunity to ask, first of all, ask any questions that you have, and then transition into some of their comments as well. And then we'll open up the Q&A to everybody again. Natali, Oprya, Maria, Savva, and Iryna, Oprya. These are three extraordinary ladies. I've spoken with two of them in the past, and I'm always just so impressed how smart they are, how dynamic they are. And I actually, ladies, I haven't told you this, but I tell a story how I was talking to a Japanese member and I transitioned into speaking with you. And that transition almost blew my mind in terms of the Japanese, you know, very circular and very calm and very, and then I got into the meeting with you. This was before you became a member. And it was like, wow, I feel almost like I really now have to pay attention to what's being said because it's happening real time. And so I've been always impressed by your knowledge and your capability. And I've got to believe that right now you're going through just so much. So please, however you'd like to structure it, ask any questions of Igor, make any comments on what you've heard, and then add any additional comments that you'd like to make. In terms of how you want to structure it, Natalia, do you want to go first?
Yes, absolutely. Hi, Doug. Hi.
Good to see you.
Good to see you too, Doug. My first question, first Global Chamber audience, it's nice to see some of you and to meet some of you. Igor, it's nice to meet you. And Doug, about the questions, I would like to structure this first and foremost, asking the question. First, Doug, do you remember when we last spoke to you? You asked how things are happening in Ukraine and whether we believe in the reality of the war happening in Ukraine, and even that it did not happen overnight. So all the smart people have been watching the troops and the Russian tanks being brought to Belarus border and also to the Ukrainian and Russian borders. So that didn't come as a surprise. Actually, no one believed till the very start of the 24th of February it would ever start. And the next question would be, if you could imagine, Doug, that you would arrange this common meeting between us, Global Chamber audience, and also Igor, I would hardly imagine any reason, unfortunately or fortunately, besides the war. So I would say that's the price for the transformation. And, you know, for me, although this war has transformed myself, and although I thought I'm quite a flexible person being involved very deeply and actively for many years in the international business, actually it required another level of flexibility. So the main question which I would like to ask Igor is the practical initiatives to support the small and medium business of Ukraine. With your connections and with your previous experience, could you share any initiatives, any programs where the Global Chamber audience can contribute, can, for example, refer the global employers, the Western companies who would potentially involve the Ukrainian people? If you know, I'm sure you are aware of such initiatives. Could you please share? That's the question to Igor.
Yeah, I got that. Hi. First of all, nice to meet you. Look, there aren't any structured initiatives just yet, and I've only today had this conversation with the president's office, but you know they're preoccupied with 100 different things, and you know If you want to do something well, do it yourself. So I can promise you then within a few days, I'll create an initiative and I'll try and organize, this chaos into something, more or less practical. In terms of what can be done, I think, first of all, I would especially ask, larger businesses, but that applies to smaller businesses as well, to try and look at yourself and audit yourself in a way, where can you welcome Ukrainians temporarily in your business, right? Where can you employ Ukrainians, right? What extra added value in a non-zero-sum format can Ukrainians bring to you? So, for example, look, I've mentioned my team, right? The 25 people of, Singularity and the rest of the business side of what I do. Well, basically, look, some of them are top experts on, on information and disinformation campaigns, right? They've been studying it for 5 years, and they were the team that dealt with Trump's impeachment, right? With containing the media fallout. So, I mean, they work the top stories in the world. That kind of a team would potentially benefit like any big business, say in the US, right? But you can loan them temporarily. I mean, I'm happily going to give them to like a blue chip company for them to reevaluate how, for example, reputation security of that company is managed. And they would also share insights of how cancel culture, for example, has been used against them, when some of them refuse to leave the US. So that's just one example. But look, we have some really talented, hardworking and skilled people. So temporary jobs for Ukrainians. An initiative run not by your governments, but the businesses themselves would help a lot. So that's issue number one. Issue number two, like I keep saying to my audience, is that, 21st century is not about competition in business because of that long tail effect. So, the barriers to entry have fallen in a number of industries. So what's the point in competing? Let's try and collaborate to create that added value, right? So try and think for your business one non-zero sum project that you can create with your Ukrainian counterparts. So whatever that may be, like if you run a chain of restaurants, open up a Ukrainian restaurant or temporarily switch to, Ukrainian cuisine and hire couple of Ukrainian chefs, right? And the waiters and everything. So kind of transfer business out of Kharkiv or Mariupol or Kyiv to your local area temporarily. And trust me, Ukrainians will return to Ukraine. That's one thing you can be sure of. Like we are the country, I'll give you one example. We're the country, it's hilarious because I used to be an advisor to the president. So, the inner circle, everything, a very powerful man I used to be. People would call me when the war started, like young male adults would call me. And I expected those calls to be like, help me get out of the country. But you know what the calls were about? They were like, I want to join the army, and they wouldn't take me. They're telling me all the vacancies have been filled. Can you call somebody and help me join the army? Those were the phone calls I was getting. So these people, the majority of these people are not going to settle in your area. They're going to temporarily stay there, create some value for you and for the country, for the country of Ukraine, and then return. So collaboration projects with Ukrainian businesses will be another, very important thing. Startups, that's another area, because the world is changing now so rapidly and on such a great scale that, there's plenty of opportunity for new businesses to emerge. And who's better to, for example, advise you or help you with that than the people who are probably the most adaptive nation in the world, right? We are like, the portrayal of what Charles Darwin was talking about not the strongest surviving, but, the most adaptive to change. And believe me, we've seen it all. Like with our revolutions, with the war with Russia, with COVID and everything, especially like in my area of expertise within like attention economy and storytelling, we are like 5 years ahead of the US in certain business areas. Like seriously, things that, I hear the US government talk about have already been democratized to a B2B level in Ukraine. So we have, for example, certain companies fight it out with like smear campaigns and pranks. That's something that Russia uses against you on the state level. That's something Russia will use you because, I can But bet your last dollar on the fact that when Putin attacks, he's not going to attack you with nukes or tanks, at least to start with. What he's going to try and do, he's going to weaponize every single hybrid weapon at his disposal. So cyber attacks would be one, but another one would be to try and disrupt your businesses. And, unfortunately, from what we've seen from here in Kyiv, as far as the Western businesses are concerned, you are still back in 1985, the majority of your businesses. You're slow, you're resistant to change rather than flexible and adaptive to change. You run your PR and marketing departments like it's back to 1985, right? Very fragile, right, to those attacks. And that's something Ukrainians can help you with as well. So be creative. That's my suggestion. Reach out to any of us if you need any help or networking or solutions and everything. But, if you want to do it well, do it yourselves. Kind of be creative and see where you can bring that extra value out of the market to you and to Ukraine as well, and partner up with Ukrainians.
Fantastic. Two quick comments. One is Kyle Adair was the one that connected us to you, Igor. I think it might be common friends. So Kyle, I'm not sure if you're available to say anything, but his translation company Transcend is based out of Salt Lake City, and they do translation around the world. Kyle, thank you for your assistance to do that. The other point I wanted to make is I don't think Kyle's available to speak. Okay, no worries. And the other,
sorry about that. I am here. I apologize.
Okay.
My wife had surgery yesterday, so I'm doing double duty right now with kids and things like that as well too. But appreciate and glad to be able to connect everybody here.
Thank you. Thanks for all that you do. Thank you, Kyle. The other point I wanted to make, Natalia, is that the question you asked and also the answer that you got around hiring and the cross-border aspect, that's a lot of what you guys do at Acumen, right? So what are some of the comments and thoughts that you have in terms of the answer you got from Igor and any other recommendations that you might have?
Yes, Doug, thank you for this question. And Igor, thank you for practical recommendation and advice. I would only add that I myself and Maria and Iryna, my colleagues who joined this conversation today, have been doing this, helping the global companies to work with the gig workers and mostly with the Ukrainians and also other CIS countries where the IT hubs and the global talent pools are already so huge and so well knowledgeable that many companies hire them and enjoy the benefits of good English speaking, great knowledge and great talent. And when the war started, as we mostly work with the highly skilled professionals, including the Ukrainians, what happened is the internal transformation which happened and took place in Ukraine in the last, I would say, 10 to 15 years. So we've been building our independence in the last 30 years, but during the last 10 years, I would say we've been developing our differences apart from the politics itself, apart from the government and the Ukraine as the country and as the state, but as the intellectual community of the Ukrainians. Because what happens when the war started, the Western world has opened its borders, but the transformation in the people's mind, that was Igor was mentioning when the men wanted to join the forces and the army instead of fleeing the country and leaving the country. And another thing was that intellectual Ukrainians would prefer to stay in Ukraine, although there are opportunities to live for any country. If you ask myself and many Ukrainians, I'm sure 15 years ago, the majority, I'm sure, would agree to move to some foreign country. Now we are all building our democracy and our economics, and that's amazing. So I would add here that what Igor mentioned is able to support the Ukrainian economy by involving the Ukrainians who stayed in Ukraine, and also by working with the displaced Ukrainians who found themselves now anywhere in Europe, in the US. And what we do in our business is we actually help now to to transfer these employees from Ukraine, or we help the companies, our clients, who have faced the challenge of either losing the employee who they want to work with and to retain these workers, but who could no longer stay in Ukraine because they had to leave to keep their families alive. So what we have now and what we are doing, which is part of our business, is the solution for displaced employees. We arrange the onboarding and all these HR admin to help the companies to work with these displaced workers, no matter where they are based now, because they left the country. And we also transfer the Ukrainians who are now in Ukraine but plan to leave. But in some regions, they have had no opportunity to leave before. What we did as a business, Doug and a part of the Global Chamber audience is aware that we had operations in Russia and in Belarus. We stopped these operations. We have decided to close the office, and we have terminated all contracts with our clients and with the employees, especially those who we hired in Russia. And we have found the solution about which I would like Maria to speak. So I'm not taking her stage and time, but we are no longer operating in Russia and in Belarus, but still we have a solution for our clients because that's the tribute and the long-term business relationship. So Maria, would you please tell us a little bit more how we have found the way out after stopping the operations in Belarus and Russia?
Yeah, hi everyone. So I'm not from Ukraine, but I work with a great Ukrainian team led by Natali. And during this period, I've seen a team of colleagues and friends being displaced. And they're very strong people. I just wanted to mention that. Saying that, regarding Russia, when we were speaking with our clients, informing them of the termination, our clients didn't want to find other solutions in Russia. So they understand also the value of the quality of the service that we were offering in Russia and wanted solutions. So we discussed internally and thought about employing the employees in Kazakhstan while they're being in Russia. So it seems that it's a viable solution. Employees are being onboarded in Kazakhstan. They're staying in Russia, basically being paid in Russia, not having to relocate, opening bank accounts remotely. It seems to be working, and it's a good solution also for our clients. I also wanted to mention about Ukraine and our clients in Ukraine. None of our clients terminated the projects. The majority actually stayed in Ukraine, supporting the employees, giving out bonuses and advance payments. And I'm very proud of our clients as well, and our team who is managing everything, making sure that they're not missing any payrolls and making sure that all the money that their employers want to give out are given. And it seems that, yeah, Ukraine is clients is going very well. I mean, there's no change there. I don't know if Iryna wants to add something here.
Yes, I do, Maria, thank you. Natali just mentioned that some of global audience met you, Natali. Yeah, you talked to the audience. Can I ask you, how many of you know the concept of global PEO, the company, the concept that we are dealing with, our main and core service of Acumen International?
Yeah, I would imagine that, maybe half. It's an idea that many of the people in Global Chamber understand, and we have a few visitors. So if you'd like to give a brief explanation, that's fine.
Yeah. What is a global employer of record? And here I would really give the stage again to Natali, because she was doing this for 7 years already. And Natali, the aspect I would like you to stress is which one? How this global PEO helped our current clients, and really the ones who started, the international employers who came to our company, how it helped them to understand that they have a ready-made solution, a ready-made global infrastructure. So this aspect, can you tell more about this?
Yeah, I will. I see Igor is raising the hand. So Igor,
really quickly.
Yeah.
I'll show you one case. So in Ukraine, we have this strict rule now. Whenever there's a missile hitting something, you shouldn't post pictures on the media and so on and so forth, because the enemy will see it and is likely to attack there again. You realize you just said how you're bypassing our pressure on Russia to one of the top people who's dealing with keeping that pressure alive. So I'm not going to mention it to anyone or anything, but seriously, don't help Russian employees avoid sanctions via Kazakhstan or elsewhere. Okay, because it's a reputational risk for you. And let me stress that really kind of clearly and explicitly. And secondly, there's a reason we're asking Western businesses to leave Russia. That is to make it uncomfortable enough for the Russian people, ordinary Russian people, so that their critical thinking wakes up from their zombified uncomfortable state that is spent between their TV that's zombifying them and the fridge. So we want to take one out of the equation so that they wake up and realize that, their regime are a bunch of genocidal Nazis, right? Killing tens of thousands of civilians. So that's important. So, and also academically, there's a lesson for you. So that's how the world works. Previously, it worked fine. Now you just put yourself potentially under attack. Because I'm actually one of the people who's dealing with the companies who are trying to be clever around Russia. So I won't do anything because it's a circle of trust here. But please don't do it. Stop.
Thank you.
Let me add
you want to address that or answer the question?
Yes, absolutely. Igor, let's look, that's an interesting discussion and I was prepared for this. So let our team be very transparent. Let's look at the business relationship from the client perspective. So our company works with the US-based and UK-based and European countries. So we would never let down our clients. And by terminating the agreements and the business operations in Russia, we are only doing this, what Maria was speaking about, for the employees that have worked for these clients, and we respect these clients. And we decided not to leave these clients stranded. That's the only thing which we are doing. We are not offering this solution to other businesses. We are no longer supporting Russia and Belarus, and we are not, of course, marketing or generating any KINE on these transfers. So I'm not talking about the pricing policies here, but what I want to stress is, you understand, when there is the business contract with the client and when there are obligations, when there are employee benefits, Igor, you would understand what that means. You are hiring the people and we are hiring on our client's behalf. So that's the transfer of employees, no risks and full compliance. That's the only thing. Other things which I would like to mention is we are not driving the global chamber audience and the Western world to operate in Russia or somehow help the Russian talent. No way, not at all. My concept and the idea of global PO is vice versa, to work with the Ukrainian specialists like IT specialists, medical staff, doctors, lawyers, digital marketing managers who are now everywhere in Europe. And the transformation which they have survived during the last months of their lives is that in most cases, they aren't the only bread makers now in their families, because they have to pay the utilities here in Ukraine and they still have liabilities in their country and they need to adjust to a new reality in anywhere in Europe. So I ask everyone to support the talent by giving them jobs, by finding the talents. And what we can do is to help you payroll or compensate this talent in any country where you may need this. So administration would remain on us. The talent would be all working for you. That's it. But let's keep Russia and Belarus separate from our business activity, because our operations are ceased there and no longer the company Acumen International is operating in any of these countries. I think, Igor, I made it like the distinction and the clarity here. And I would also like to add about the main differences, which unfortunately the war has brought to light, how we are different from the Russian citizens, Russian nationals. I mean, by we, I mean the Ukrainians, because I and Iryna originally from Ukraine and we are Ukrainians. So Igor, you mentioned Taleb's black swan concept, but I would add that Ukrainians have turned and have demonstrated the anti-fragility, which the world was not expecting and I think was surprised with. So here I would want to ask the Global Chamber, the Western audience, to be creative in the initiatives for these anti-fragile people, because you understand, it's like starting the life from scratch, being anywhere outside of your country and still being prepared to work. So for example, I would look at the opportunities to make some educational initiatives, to make some programs, for instance, the online restaurant involving people sharing the recipes of Ukrainian foods and then having local people, for example, cooking by these recipes in the local restaurants. So let's think of some initiatives how anyone from Ukraine still living in Ukraine because they are principled and don't want to leave, anyone from the Ukraine who is displaced now in Europe and in the US, and let's think in market relations. So I do believe in the market relations, and I would like to raise interest in supporting these small and medium businesses. You can also look at the IT hub, which is great in Ukraine, and now it's spread all over Europe. So look at the IT specialists. They have really great IT background and good English speaking skills. So please help with the jobs, with the engagement and involvement of the global talent. And the concept of global PO, which our business is doing, is just the celebration of these gig workers, gig talent that we might be able to assist with.
Thank you, Natali. I appreciate both of your perspectives on this and recognize there's a little bit of a gray area that might not be gray area, a very principled Igor concept that you've introduced. So thank you for sharing that. Would love to focus in on the things that we as an audience can do to help. Some of the things I hear both of you say around hiring Ukrainians. Igor, you mentioned about finding a project to involve Ukrainians and also startups, 3 different options for companies around the world, not just in the US, to participate in. Would love, Natalia, if there's anything else that you and your team have to say. I'll let both of you, in either case, make some closing comments. We're at the top of the hour. We'll go a few minutes over. Natalia, is there anything else that you and your team wanted to share today in terms of things either that we should know or next steps?
I think I have nothing else to share apart from the additional information which you, Doug, may be sharing later. I would also speak about the extremities. I think this war, I will share my personal opinion that what happened in Ukraine and the war that Putin started in Ukraine is the war of not only Ukraine because of 2 reasons. First, the war of resources and the intellectual resources, not only natural resources. So I would ask everyone not to go to extremities in any way, because what you see in Ukraine now and what you see in Russia is the difference in the flexibility level. And it always goes in line with the intellectual thing. So the more intellectual and smart you are, the less extreme you are. And my idea is that we as a business support the Ukrainians anywhere in the world and support the global companies that can benefit from the huge intellectual resource of the Ukrainians that can benefit their company and then come back to Ukraine if you work with the displaced Ukrainian nationals who were forced to leave the country. Iryna, Maria, would you like to add anything?
Yeah, I would. Maria, if I'm not interrupting you, I would add here that today I had, all these days, I'm observing a great power of networks when all the companies based in the US or globally, they are just posting any name, any position of the person or the team members they really personally know that they had worked with before, and they say that this is this and this professional, the qualification is like this, she or he, okay, mostly this is she, is now displaced finding herself there and there. You may hire, you may offer this person a job. And what we are doing, I would really ask you to think about your knowledge base, about your network, all the people and business owners, global employers who are interested or who used to employ the Ukrainian staff and who are interested in employing the Ukrainian staff. Because even if this personnel is already displaced and found themselves in European unknown countries, or if they are still staying in Ukraine, here we have a solution that you can use to onboard them legally, easily, and risk-free. So if we use the power of our memory, of our network, of the person or business owners that you really know, you can help really quickly without looking for any funds or any links that we will, of course, share with you, without donating. I personally don't believe in donations because this is general. This is not touching me personally with the position or with the person I can help practically with. What I can say about our model, Global PO, this is my personal impression also through this month of war in Ukraine, that PO, this is a people concept of people business. This core is people. Personally, Igor, I would disagree with you, but this is from my journalistic side. I'm silent about this while I'm serving this business and the company Acumen International. You know, when you analyze, when your analysis starts only from Putin and what he is already doing, I'm now asking you, your analytical mind, do you really agree that we are having a global perspective and that you are giving a global perspective? This is question number one. And another one is,
Iryna, because of Igor needs to go.
Yeah. I'll answer this really quickly.
I would any other closing comments that you want to make?
My analytical question. Remember you said that you're using that program in Kazakhstan for existing clients only and you're not expanding it. So why did you showcase it today? Are there any of your existing clients on this call? Or, that's in terms of analytics. Like, look, in terms of global perspectives, there's no even not an hour, there's no 24-hour Zoom call that can even start picking apart this situation, right? It's not only about Putin, it's also about China, it's about Ukraine, it's about the US. So the world is changing in a major way, right? What I mentioned in terms of not helping Russia, that's the policy that the Ukrainian government at the moment, is following. And we're in the middle of the war, whether you like it or not, now is not the time to to argue, right? So, you either fight that war or you don't, right? There's a reason. Soldiers don't question orders. Okay. My personal opinion, if you want it, in terms of whether it's going to work, I see the strategy of sanctions on Russia, like severe sanctions without any information campaigns for the Russians, actually backfiring, because it's that discomfort that's actually causing that rally around the flag effect that's leading to Putin's approval going up, right? So Russians feel uncomfortable, they get pissed off. Nobody explains to them what's going on. And they go okay, well, maybe the collective West is our enemy, right? And that's what you're seeing, within the sociology at the moment. But at the same time, look, first of all, it's a war. Secondly, there's more to what's going on now that's above the waterline, right? There are certain things that, remain confidential, classified at the moment. So that's all I can say on the matter. Can we quickly ask Kyle, because he's had his hand up and he wanted to ask me something.
Please.
It's somewhat of a question, but just kind of starting of different ways. What Igor was saying before, that we're kind of a little bit archaic and we're moving slow on things, that it takes this bureaucratic time to kind of make things happen. One of the things here, particularly in the United States, is that there are laws on the books that basically the people from Ukraine, they do not have to, I don't think anybody's going to deport Ukrainians from the United States and try to send them back to their country. But sadly, that's how it is currently. There are laws in place that can delay that, kind of an amnesty, sort of say. There's two different ways to do that. But one of the ways that our organization is being able to help out is we partner with a law firm that they have simplified that, because honestly, they're very technical legal jargon that no one, not even people that are fluent in English, would be able to understand, let alone a Ukrainian that maybe English is their second language, or maybe they don't even speak that language and having to get the help of lawyers to jump in. So one of the things that we're doing, and Doug, I'll send out the information once it's all finalized, but we're helping with a pretty well-known tech law firm here in the United States who has simplified that. And then now we're helping those instructions to be in Ukrainian. And so they can answer, which will prepare a whole packet for them that they're able to send in. So by the laws of the book here in the United States, things go the right way. Like I said, do I think anybody would actually be deported? No, I don't think so. But it's just that thing that Igor talked about. It's slow, it's archaic, it doesn't move as quickly as it needs to because our information is moving so quickly. So we have to step up that speed. And so there's lots of different ways to help. And that's one way that we're trying to help and figure things out. So Igor, sorry, not so much of a question, but I'd love your thoughts on that too.
Well, yeah, that's one of the problems, and that's a problem we're gonna, I think, experience and feel the pain from globally over the next 5 years. Because the changes, digital, the methodologies and governments and practices and policies are analog, basically. That bureaucracy, it's been there for a reason. In the 20th century, it was protecting us from rapid change and the turbulence it causes. Now we live in that rapid change, so we need to adapt everything around us, and it extends way beyond governance. It's also our education system and all the social institutes. But yeah, I mean, we have to make do with what we have, play the cards we're dealt. So let's adapt that. If you need anything amplified in Ukraine, or if you need my help getting in touch with, Zelensky's team, feel free to reach out. Doug has my contacts. And guys, I'm sorry I have to run, but I have to do MSNBC in like 10 minutes. So thank you for having me. And hopefully I didn't offend anyone. Sorry, Acumen. I mean, look, ethically, I'm one of the...
Can I make a short note, Igor? A very short note. You are talking about being able to change, but two things that you talked about the showcase case. When competing for global talent, we are showcasing the case, an alternative one, transforming us, novel way that we are looking for. We are ready for transition, but think about what you were talking about. Are you? Because the bureaucracy to fight with is inside us. We should start from us. This is my short point. Thank you. That's why we showcased it.
Yeah. Okay. Cool.
Any other comments, Igor?
Guys, quickly, I'm here for another minute. Any questions? Once again, I'm sorry. Look, I'm sorry if I offended you, and I dislike ethically, what's going on within the information war at the moment. Because I'm one of the people actually protecting Ukraine from it. Before the war, and using the dark arts. It's like being the evil Professor Snape, right, from Harry Potter, but the evil version of it. But at the same time, look, we have to fight on every front, unfortunately.
Yeah.
And I think unfortunately, it's going to be painful for everyone. It's not going to be only going to be painful to
question.
Doug,
Doug.
Yeah.
Doug.
Yeah. Guys,
Bill.
Igor, I just want to say to you and everyone from Ukraine that we're all behind you, and we're honored that your people are like they are, and best wishes to you all. Okay.
Perfect. Thank you very much, guys. I really have to run. Sorry.
Thank you, Igor.
I'll be in touch. Thank you for hosting me, and sorry if I offended anyone. Okay?
Our pleasure. No worries.
Bye.
We'll follow up. Take care.
Bye. Bye.
We're going to keep going for a little bit, just a few more minutes. And Bill Edwards is a trade expert, 47 plus years in international trade, and has undoubtedly been to Ukraine many times. And so thank you for sharing that important point, Bill. We have probably just a couple more minutes because I actually also have to run to another meeting. Natalia, I wanted you to respond, but also or any other, not just to what Igor mentioned, if you wanted to, but also any closing comments that you wanted to make.
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, Natali.
Oh, Maria?
I just want to mention something about Acumen. Actually, Acumen hasn't let anyone go, even though our business is affected. I'll be closing the offices for us was a big decision, but we are still keeping our teams. Even our teams are dislocated, and many mornings we were wondering where everybody was. But we managed to coordinate this displacement and managed to keep everyone online and keep our operations going. I just wanted to mention that because we're doing a great job, and the Ukrainian team is very strong and smart and skillful. So Ukrainians, we're also helping them in Europe. We've actually started immigration processes for a number of employees, and in countries like Austria, which was really interesting too. And everybody's really helpful. The authorities are very open and flexible as well, according to the legislations that now everything is enacted and making things easy. Just wanted to mention that, just a final note.
That's a really important point.
Doug, thank you for having us. No offenses at all. I really don't think that we should focus much on what Igor said. So I do believe in the sanctions, and I do believe that we can stop by the sanctions, because that's the war of not only Ukraine, but the whole Western world. And we all need to grow and choose our vector. But think in terms of human beings. So what Maria mentioned is not only the team. Ukraine and Russia has been living in Soviet Union, and we have brothers and sisters. And so the question is, would you refuse to help your sister or your brother who lives in the double world? Because there are smart people in Russia. And so my idea, apart from business, let's keep business away from this. Let's think in terms of not extremities and sanctioning and imposing sanctions. Like, for example, we've heard our colleagues who saw the cases when Russian people were hit only because they are Russians. Let's not be standardized and have these stereotypes, but let's differentiate between human nature, between the human and the radical. And let's grow together, but in a smart way. So we are helping with the solution, which used to be a revenue channel for our business. Now that's the question of life. So we are here not to offend someone, or to raise the radical idea of sanctioning or any radical things, because the radical and the extremities have brought the media war that happened in Russia, and that have actually partially at least caused this war. But let's think in terms of solutions and find the solution to collaborate with the Ukrainians and to help the gig workers to support the Ukrainian economy, whether they stay in Ukraine or they work outside the Ukraine. And we are here to help with the HR and admin.
Thank you. Couple quick points. Bronis Gronelik in the comments section is a trusted resource. He's a member of Global Chamber. I'm working with him personally, and he has a charity he sent to me earlier today by email. And so if you're interested in giving and donating and helping children in Ukraine, please get in touch with me or with Bronis directly. And undoubtedly, that's a reputable charity that he's working with. I also want to kind of key into what Mona Contractor from India has asked, being in the food industry, asking how they can help. And I'm interested to, I guess I don't want to open the door to about the help or not help that the country of India is doing. I went back into Prime Minister Modi's, all of his tweets and Facebook over the last couple months, and have seen nothing about Ukraine, which honestly is very disappointing. I would have hoped and have expected him to be on board more visibly. Maybe there's something invisible that I don't understand. I'm wondering, Natalia, in terms of closing, any comments you want to make about those points, and what would you like to see next? What would you like us to do or to think about in terms of a next step?
Yeah, Doug, thanks for raising this. So apart from the supporting the Ukrainian army and forces, there are many refugees funds. So there are Ukrainian people who unfortunately have to leave with the families and have no longer their apartments or their homes, and have no funds to live and to support their families. So everyone from the food industry, find the sources. Doug, you also have the information. I haven't shared it here in chat, but anyone who is interested can get from you these refugees funds. And so you can support these refugees, because apart from the Ukrainian forces, there are many ordinary, regular people with the small kids who need the support, clothing, foods. And my main messages and the next step would be, first and foremost, to focus how you can be most efficient in what you do best, and how you can help at least one person who is asking for either food or accommodation, and being able to help. And us as a business, of course, I'm not marketing here, because it's mostly about solutions for the global talent. So here I'm not, Doug, you know that you've invited us to participate in these meetings mostly to find the prospects and the potential clients. Today, I and our team is on the employee side, on the talent side. So I'm asking as the next step, find the way to support the Ukrainian talent, and you will get a lot of benefits, while the talent will not only enjoy the additional benefit like IT talent has done in the past, but will be able to support their mothers, their fathers, their kids, their families who stayed at home. And that's, I think, the human, the people aspect, which I would like to add in business. And thanks for having us, Doug. It's really nice to meet.
Doug will not ask or invite us next time, Natali.
No, quite the contrary. But I love the contrast that you made, because every day we're like, where are the next opportunities? How do we help people grow? And that's maybe part of the reason why I felt nervous doing this event. I wasn't sure what to expect, and we certainly saw some interesting conversations today. And it is somewhat shifted, right, in terms of what you just said, Natalia, in terms of thinking about the employees rather than the companies and the trade. You know, how can we help them? You know, it becomes a lot more personal. You know, I think we're all involved in business because we believe that, you know, we want to help others, you know, enjoy their life, appreciate life, get wealth so that they can have a better life for their children. And here it's a much more basic fundamental issues that we're really addressing here. Like, you know, can I have a shelter over my head? This is the Maslow's pyramid, right? It's like the basic human rights that we need to have as people that are being attacked and being addressed. And so there are different things that we need to do. So thank you for addressing that and really making some really important points.
Doug, just a short notice and some stats. So about 90% of Ukrainian businesses have stopped operations or have stopped paying to their employees. So what we are able to do is we are supporting and still paying the salaries, because we are lucky to be an international business, although part of our team is now working from Ukraine, and we have moved them from Kyiv, where we had our office, to the safer places in Europe as well as in Ukraine. And so just keep in mind that your help is not about donations and investing a lot of funds, but just giving a job to one person who is highly skilled, who will give the benefit to your company, but who is the only bread maker in the family because he is making this money. And that's huge, I think. That's what we are here for.
Yeah, can I also give another perspective? What I'm dealing with is studying many platforms who are placing many materials on how they are helping Ukrainians. Whenever you think about Acumen, about this global PO concept and us being included, also please refer those companies and refer us to them for us to communicate and cooperate, because we can really do much more together. But when you are cold contacting them, and maybe these are the people that you, Global Chambers audience already know, already refer us to each other for partnering such platforms. I mean, for example, such platforms that help employees and employers meet, when employees show their qualification and employers select them, right? Whenever they are dealing with the stuff, with the Ukrainian talent, Acumen is here to come with the solutions that comes next after they have selected the candidates. Also think about them, because cold contacting, you are writing to them, you are reaching out to them, but it's better if you know them personally and you say, you can partner and you can deal with Acumen, with us, or with this or this Ukrainian talent. Also,
Thank you for sharing that. And so with that, we're gonna wrap up unless Natalia, you have anything else that you'd like to add. This has been a really exciting and interesting and important conversation today. What we'll do is we'll pull all of the information that we heard today and any other information that you send in. Natalia, I'd love to get the links that you talked about. If you don't, whether or not they're in the chat, could you send me those, and I'll include that in the blog post. We'll have a recording up by next week, and we'll get this communicated out to the global tribe around the world. I'm really happy and enthused. I see people from Myanmar and Ruby in Ghana, on this call. We had Daniel from Uzbekistan earlier, Branis, who's from the CIS countries as well. I think Kazakhstan. I'm sorry, Branis, maybe Russia originally, but dedicated to supporting Ukraine. So thank you all in the audience for all your supporting comments and questions. If you have any other additional either questions or comments or resources, send them to me, Doug@globalchamber.org, and I'll make sure that gets communicated out to all the people on this call. All the people that attended today will get a copy of the blog, will get a copy of the video recording, and then links to all of the information. Natalia, I'd be remiss if I didn't let you get the last word. Any other comments that you wanted to make?
Thank you, Doug. Thank you all. I believe in the global chamber power and in each and every one of us to choose just one person and to help them, him or her, with whatever we can do. So we can make a small step, but it will be a huge leap.
Thank you very much. I think there's a couple of things I'd like to finish with. One of the things I learned when I lived in Singapore was, and being an American of German, Polish heritage, that there were things that the government was doing to the people of Singapore that I was not comfortable with, but seemed to make a lot of sense for Singapore. When you think about an island 34 miles across, 15 miles high with no natural resources, what they've been able to do is unbelievable. The government and their leadership has been amazing. However, they did survive without some human rights slightly different than what Americans are used to. And the example I've given is going to a movie called The First Wives Club, which is about women taking control of the divorce and taking money from their husbands. That was rated X. We could not bring our 13-year-old daughter to go to that movie. And that was a wake-up call for me that, well, wait a minute, you mean the government can do that? That's unbelievable. And it was like a big deal in my head. And it started also subsequently for me to see how Singaporeans tend to not be involved in politics. And many Chinese, I think, are like that too. As long as you were making money, everything's fine. Don't worry about civil liberties, a little bending here, a little bending there, everything is okay. I think that's part of the challenge that we're facing as a world today, is that we do need to get sometimes involved, and that sometimes being bullied, is a time to stand up, and to say, look, that's not right. And I'm not going to let that happen to me or my children. And at the end of the day, we're here for a short amount of time. It's not just about us. It's about future generations. And what will they think of us, if we don't stand up to protect Ukraine? And so I think that's certainly part of the thing that I'm left with, the fight that you guys have. And then finally, I would say, regarding the fight, I would not want to meet Iryna or Natalia in an alley one-on-one fighting each other. I mean, these are people, or Igor, these are people that are dedicated to believing in what they believe, and what they believe is what we believe. That we have a certain right to live our life and not be told, by whoever. It doesn't matter who it is. But and if you're going to try to take that away from me, I'm going to fight you. And I wouldn't want to fight any of you because you would kick my butt, and you are tough and you are smart and you are dedicated. And, we totally support what you're doing. And so whatever else we can do, please let us know. Okay.
Doug, I have an important addition here. Please share with the Western world, anyone who you can. This is not a Russian aggression. This is the Russian war. And the war has been happening not since the February of this year, but in the last 8 years. So please share, because that's the Russian, not just the aggression or conflict. I have seen in many posts in social networks, and it really isn't what it is. That's the Russian war. I believe in sanctions. I don't believe in the 100%, but if you are able to impose this, please impose, and together we will survive. But let's remain the human beings in the big political world. In Ukraine, not everyone was political, but after February 24th, everyone is understanding politics, because it's like, you know, in this saying, if you are not interested in the politics, politics will sooner or later get interested in you. So let's remain human beings.
I can add here, Natali, sorry to interrupt you. I can add for the Western world, really for global audience, I guess that each of us should take any war or any hotspot really personally, close to our hearts. Because when we deal with politics, with some faraway objects and something like this, it's not up to us. We are not taking it through us. And when we now analyze Ukraine or how the things turned to be, for me, this is really strange that the analyst advisors to the presidents didn't know how bad this war would be, because people really knew it. Otherwise, they wouldn't be weaponed, they wouldn't be trained, but this is another aspect. If we take anything very serious and any war through the aspect of people, we would really, I would really ask you to think about this concept of nostalgia for peaceful life. Because for me, people fighting already with the weapons, already blood on their hands, it's an after effect. And for me, it means that smart people, advisors, presidents didn't do anything for diplomacy, for making this all solved. Is this compared to even one human life? When we say that people are already on the edge, calling not to leave the country to fight, for me, this is a huge question. I just don't know, as a journalist, who in my country I could ask it. So nostalgia for peaceful life, for me, I believe would give us new diplomacy, new rules, even the international laws, new perspectives and new implementation ways. And all those international laws coming into effect before, but not now when it's happening. I'm speaking now only for Ukraine. This is if not talking about business, but anyway.
Thank you. Yeah, we need to care about our neighbor, not just the one in the house next door, but across whatever border, a state or a country border, and have the empathy to care. And so thank you for bringing that really important point up. We need to care more. And I think if nothing else, that's certainly one of the lessons of all of this. Through COVID, we've shared something. Now through Ukraine, we see something that's happening that we can do something about. And move faster. And I'll leave you with the concept of urgency and impatience. You know, I think all of us and the things that really matter need to be more impatient. You know, the ability for women to be in leadership, you know, the ability for people to live a free and right life and to do trade, you know, and to continue to encourage trade. To do trade, you have to be peaceful and resilient and negotiating and mediating, and trade is a good thing overall. When you do trade, you need a lot less soldiers. And so let's continue through all of this, in addition to solving this problem and resolving it, to continue to expand trade, because that is helping the world as well. Thanks everybody for taking your time today. Have a great rest of your day. Watch for additional information. Ladies, thank you for all the information, and audience, thank you as well. I'm Doug Brunke and I'm out. Take care, everybody.
Bye-bye. Bye.
Bye.